that's the work the partnership is going to be heavily engaged with making sure we can have a much more inclusive DSM moving forward. And we need all of you to be part of that dialogue. And we need to listen, and we need to act. And that's what we're going to be doing. Also, an update on the DSM task force. I know a number of you have been, DSM Forward Task Force, I should say, a number of you have been heavily engaged with that work. We've now rolled out 16 DSM Forward industry playbooks that provide guidance for companies and organizations as they are developing their opening strategies and making sure that continue to take those healthcare precautions with social distancing and all those other precautions to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 moving forward, at the same time continuing to open up our economy. The work of the DSM Forward Task Force continues to advance. Yesterday I'd mentioned One Economy. The One Economy report we heard from Deidre DeGier and Terry Caldwell-Johnson, who have been helping lead that work, and there will be new recommendations that will be coming out, and as a community we really need to work closely with those leaders of One Economy to help move our region forward and become a much more inclusive DSM USA. We also heard during that last task force meeting from Dale Cronk, who's the Chief Investment Officer for Wealth and Investment Management at Wells Fargo, one of their chief economists, and presented a really excellent overview of the national economy and things that we need to be looking at here in Greater Des Moines moving forward as we continue to move forward with continue to build up our economy and get things moving again, full steam ahead. We'll continue to work with that group. We're going to be putting together more specific strategies in terms of economic recovery for our region, and so stay tuned for that as well too. And we continue to welcome all of your ideas in terms of what are those new, not only challenges, but more importantly, what are those new opportunities that we have as a region that we can help propel our economy forward. So again, thanks to everybody who's continued to step up and keep DSM strong. There's so many stories of hope and optimism and success out there, and we need to continue to be inspired by those and replicate those and continue to move forward. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Tauschak, our Chief Strategy Officer, for some updates on our short-term strategic plan and other items we're working on. Tiffany.
Thanks, Jay. And as Jay just mentioned, just want to again underscore the importance of storytelling and sharing dialogue, sharing information. Just please know that we as a partnership team are here and listening and very eager to do what we can to offer not only the listening ear, but support and action. And that goes also across the board for many of the topics we're discussing today. As you know, we've been talking about our short-term strategies over the course of the last couple of months as they related to specifically COVID-19, and have just a few updates to share with you today in regards to our COVID-19 short-term strategies. The DSM Forward webpage has continued to have strong engagement with now over 8,000 page views, with individuals spending more than 2.5 minutes on each of those pages. And we've published now since mid-March more than 155 blog posts related to COVID-19 recovery and 45 podcasts that have highlighted leadership in our great community. Those 45 podcasts are published or currently in production, and would invite any of you that would be interested in participating and sharing your story of leadership and leading in times of challenge to please let us know. We want to have as many leaders involved with that and sharing their stories as possible. Our DSM Strong hashtag now has more than 44.5 million impressions, which is fantastic. Thanks everyone for continuing to share that message. And the DSM Local Challenge hashtag that we've partnered very closely with Catch Des Moines on now has more than 37 million impressions. So we urge you to just continue using those hashtags and help us with storytelling as much as possible. We've hosted more than 50 different events and have a number of other upcoming events coming up in the next few weeks. We'll talk about those again a little bit more at the end of the agenda, but we will post a list of the full events calendar on the chat so you can access that. But again, I know we have a very important dialogue and conversation to have today, so Jay, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Tiffany. We're now going to be moving into our update from our healthcare systems. And joining us today, I believe we have Carl Keeler with Mercy One and David Stark with Unity Point Health. And Carl and David, I'm not sure who's starting today, so I'll throw it over to both of you.
David, are you there? Yeah, Jay, I didn't see him on the in any of the pictures, so maybe I'll quickly go. As we sit today in the state, there's been over 20,000 Iowans confirmed COVID positive. We've tested over 165,000. That's an incident rate of 12.2% of those tested. We also have had, unfortunately, the deaths in Iowa have been 564. We at Mercy, we actually just passed our 300th discharged COVID patient. And we've had, at Mercy, we've had about 20% of the total Iowa COVID population that have been hospitalized. In our region, we have 314 patients hospitalized. In Iowa, 314 people hospitalized with COVID. In our region, Central Iowa region, we have 139 that are hospitalized. And we have had over 12,000 in our region that have recovered. So for a hospitalization rate of 1.69%. So I think we are definitely on the downtrend. Our T, which goes through the number or what our infection kind of rate is, that is still below 1, although it has slightly come up a little bit, but still staying below 1. We have started over the last couple of weeks with our elective procedures. We're still not seeing the full recovery of those. We're still down about 40% in our elective procedures for a number of reasons. One, just getting all the services kind of back up and going, as well as just, quite frankly, patients still worried about coming in and being concerned with their own health. So, and that's 100% appropriate. Our inpatients, though, are closer back to where they were pre-COVID. They're about 10 to 12% under where we were from a pre-COVID perspective. So I think, from that standpoint, we are seeing at least some positive trends in the state. For us at Mercy, we have just right around 40 patients from an inpatient, which is our lowest. We had just a couple weeks ago in the mid 80s. So it is a significant decrease from what we've seen from a patient population. We are, just as you talk about George Floyd and the whole, some of just inequities, there's inequity in healthcare as well. And as we look to that, we are having a town hall meeting for all of our Mercy One affiliates this Friday. And we are having Bishop Johnson from, he's the bishop for our diocese here. We're also having Pastor Whitfield. He is with the Corinthian Baptist Church, as well as Police Chief Wingart, who is going to come, and actually we're going through with healthcare and how do we deal with those inequities, and having kind of working with that conversation with our own healthcare employees, because there is such a close tie between kind of the healthcare worker kind of on the front line, as well as working with law enforcement. So how do we work through and have that dialogue and have that those conversations to make sure that we are helping to move forward. So I don't know if David joined or not, but I'll turn it over to David if he joined.
Carl, I don't think he is going to be able to make it, but I think let's open it to questions, Carl, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And I'm going to start too. I think those new numbers are really something that we should be very excited about and moving in the right direction. As far as what's been happening with with people coming back to work and the restrictions being lifted from the governor, and with all the things that we've been talking about, and with Memorial Day, we saw pictures in certain places and people getting outside and maybe following the social distancing as much, and then also with protests and those sort of things. How are you feeling about what those numbers are going to look like, or is it sort of a wait and see, or what are you hearing out there?
So, well, obviously from a healthcare perspective, that is, you're seeing a lot of people that aren't practicing either social distancing, wearing a mask. Even just the last couple of weeks, you've seen, if you go to the grocery store, you go to the hardware store, you've seen a significant decrease in that. Unfortunately, it takes about 10 to 14 days to really see the impact. So I think after Memorial Day, it's kind of that 10 to 14 days to see what the impact is. As we're seeing today, it does look like it's continuing to decrease, but we still have another few days before we kind of see if there is going to be a spike in new cases or not. So kind of by this time next week, that will really be an indication either from kind of the protesters and from just Memorial Day to see kind of where we're at. So we'll see, really looking over the next week to see if we are going to see a spike or not.
Looks like we have a couple more questions here. First one is from President Henning from Grandview. What do you know about the potential infection rate that is in the general untested population? There are many supposed studies addressing how much community spread is coming from individuals who are infected but symptomatic. Is there any reliable information on that topic?
Well, we're still relatively new into the this pandemic, so hasn't been lots of research that has been done. A couple studies that I have seen that have been done in population, that still is for the asymptomatic, it's anywhere from 25 to 35% are asymptomatic. So they're positive but don't show any symptoms. Another thing that we are seeing is even though you might have been positive, you had COVID, and as we've tested you, you test positive for, we have one patient that has been here for 6 weeks, even though they don't have a viral load. So some of the information that they have gone, it's between 10 and 11 days after you start being asymptomatic that you continue to have a viral load or are contagious. And so after that, it drops off significantly. But we have seen that people are still testing positive up until 6 and 7 weeks after they were asymptomatic or they first tested positive. So that's unusual. And so we're still looking at that. So, but asymptomatic, it is still around that 25 to 35% in the kind of the 2 to 3 main studies that are out there. So, from getting back to school and everything like that, there still is a concern that there are people that are, and in the younger population, there are more asymptomatic people. And so I know there are a number of trials right now looking at the age cohorts to see, what percentage of the population is more asymptomatic than others. So unfortunately, the younger population right now is looking like it is, there are more asymptomatic carriers than it is if you're kind of over 60.
Good information. Thanks, Carl. Got at least a couple more questions here. First one is, I've heard from a personal source a high number of false negative tests, people who have all the symptoms but have tested negatives. Is this simply an anecdote, or is this reality due to the potential limitations of the test?
Well, there's a couple things. Even though you have symptoms, there are a lot of other diseases that have the exact same symptoms. So we have had a number of our physicians that have guaranteed that they've had COVID and have been tested multiple times, and as well as serology. So both have been tested as well as serology and have all been negative. There is, in any test, there is a false positive or false negative rate, but in what we're seeing from the PCR tests, it's relatively low. So you may, there are some where, because of nasopharyngeal, there are some where you test where you may not get enough. So it may be inconclusive. So we are seeing some of the inconclusive tests, but for the most part, it is relatively an accurate test. So if you are being tested and you have symptoms during that time, and you would show a viral load. So.
Hey, Jay and Carl, this is David. I'm sorry I joined late, but I would echo what Carl said, and I think the bigger issue is with some of the serology testing. That's where we've seen a lot more false results from there. I think the PCR testing has been fairly accurate, so that is more anecdotal from that question in my mind. And
on the serology, you may, your serology, even if you're inactive, if you are currently positive and you're actively having symptoms, your serology may be negative because you may not have enough antibodies that actually show up in the serology test. So there's still timing both for testing positive and then between to see if you have antibodies or not. So there's timing on both sides of the test.
David, great to have you. Do you have any other just sort of opening remarks you want to share, kind of observations in terms of where we're at right now? Carl provided some, and if you have any, that'd be great.
No, I think Carl, I'm sure, I trust him implicitly. I'm sure he covered it well, and we continue to see some of the probably more significant volume in Polk County, but hopefully we've passed our peak, and our doubling time's gone to 40 days. So nothing else to add. I'm sure he covered it well.
Great. It looks like we do have at least one more question here. What are the most challenging parts for restarting your elective procedures?
From our standpoint, one of the biggest challenges has been our continued high volume of inpatient patients that are tested positive for COVID. And so our ability to keep the requisite percentage from the governor's proclamation available, given all the other patients that are coming in very sick standpoints. So we've had to really limit how many electives we could do because we still are planning and have to keep a certain number of beds open for an additional surge. That's been our biggest challenge.
And Jay, we are in that exact same challenge. That traditional, we have 52 ICU beds. With COVID, we have increased that number because of our surge. And for the last month and a half, we have been well into the 60s. Even though our normal ICU bed capacity is 52, we've been seeing ICU patients of 60, 65, 68. But to get back to some of those other cases that still are urgent, the ICU capacity has been a challenge.
Okay, it looks like we have one more question here. When will patients be allowed to have guests accompany them to surgeries, recoveries, cancer treatments?
I'll let you answer that, David.
Hey, thanks, Carl. That has been a huge topic of conversation. We have talked a lot about that regionally, and that's something that would be important for us as the collection of hospitals here in the Polk County area, Mercy One, Broadlawn's us, to try and do it in the same way. I know there's been some movement at the University of Iowa to allow one guest in or one family member with a patient. We do have that in certain circumstances, obviously with pediatric patients, end of life, bringing somebody in to the ER. But in terms of the broader visitor policy, I would not see that changing until at least later this month, but hopefully it could change within the next month to lighten up the load on that. Carl, what else would you say?
I would just say until we see more people tested, we still, of those ones that we're testing, and we've opened up the testing criteria, so we're testing more people, not just symptomatic people. It's still 12%, over 12%. So as we try to keep not only the healthcare workers safe, keep patients safe, and those visitors, it just makes sense for us to make sure we manage that partly because our, even from a healthcare work perspective, the number is finite. So if we do have an outbreak within our own staff, that significantly decreases our ability to care for others. And so that's why we're continue to manage that, because there is still community spread. And there are such a high percentage of asymptomatic people that, you know, I feel good. I haven't been in contact with people I know, but guess what? There's still a percentage that are positive. And so that's why we're continuing and when we see that number continue to go down, that's when we'll open it up to make sure everyone is safe.
Thanks for the candid responses, much appreciated. I guess the last question is for me, and I always sort of ask this with you know, both Unity Point and Health and Mercy One have just been incredible partners with us and helping guide us through this. What can we do from the business community and all of us who are on the phone to help both Mercy One and Unity Point continue to get through this? What's your advice for us?
Carl, you want to start with that?
Well, I think it's some of the work we're doing. How do we help people bring their businesses back? How do we make sure we have communicate messages? Listen, it's still during this time. We don't have a cure as we're working on vaccination. It's still social distancing. There was just a research paper that came out just on Friday and looked at the percentage of decrease from social distancing to hand hygiene to masking and ultimately wearing face shields, and it absolutely makes a difference. And so still practicing those things while we get back to businesses as normal. So, you know, for us, making sure the community is vibrant makes a big difference for the healthcare overall. So the more people that are working, the more people that are contributing, that is the benefit. I think from a crisis perspective, we're past at least the first wave. If we see a second wave, then we'll have other challenges. But the community's been extremely generous. We've had multiple meals delivered for our healthcare workers. Just the outpouring of support for our staff has been fantastic. And so, you know, we live in a wonderful community. So I think we're very blessed. But it's really the good work that you're doing about getting everyone back to kind of as business as usual, I think is critical for us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Carl said. The only other PSA I would say is encourage all team members at your own organizations, do seek out healthcare when you're ill. We have a significant worry about people that have delayed care, some things on purpose. But boy, if you do get ill, please get in and get seen, whether that's a televisit, whether that's into a doctor's office, the emergency department. We're here to be there in a safe environment. But we don't want people to put care off unnecessarily. And so I think that's another important message the business community can get out there.
Well, Carl and David, thank you so much again for making time with us. You've been very, very generous with your time and expertise, and continue to do so. And just again, we want you to know how much we appreciate your leadership and your guidance. And as always, if there's anything that any of us can do, please let us know. And we're continuing to plow through this, and we're very lucky to have your leadership. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Jay.
You bet.
So now we're going to move into discussion on what we need to do as a community to think about becoming a more inclusive DSM. And I had, some opening remarks. You may have received a message that we emailed out to our 15,000 person list earlier today with the statement that we've released. And just, over the last week, our team has spent a lot of time, as you can imagine, talking with community leaders and talking with the Des Moines PD and elected officials, talking with business owners that have been impacted, and really just trying to do what we can do to, again, help our region and our community get through some very difficult times and very challenging issues. And I know some of you have been to some of the events that have been hosted. I personally was at the vigil on Sunday night at Union Park, and then Sunday evening at the Capitol. That were just really two tremendous events. And I think we all know that the vast majority of the protesters have been nonviolent and very much just very passionate about big issues regarding what happened, and not only to the atrocity of George Floyd, but long-term systemic issues that have boiled to the top of our society and need to be addressed and need action and not just words. And so to be as part of that discussion today, I'd asked Isaiah Knox with Urban Dreams if he would join us today. I talked earlier about Akeo, and I know a lot of you have seen him on TV and, in the middle of the protesters and the PD and helping come up with resolutions and has done just a tremendous job. But Isaiah has been there every night as well too, and Urban Dreams has done a great job of really connecting with kids in the community. And Isaiah's been having a lot of those conversations on the scenes as well, and is just a tremendous leader in our region. Has done some really great things. And I know a lot of you know him, and since he's taken over as CEO of Urban Dreams, has just done some spectacular work. And so Isaiah, thanks for joining us today. Look forward to hearing your remarks. And I know you want to reserve quite a bit of time for Q&A, but just want to let you know how much we appreciate you and your leadership.
Thank you, Jay. And yeah, I will be brief with the remarks, and then I really do want to take questions. I think it'd be a better way for remarks to happen with answering some questions that are out there. But I want everyone to know that this is literally young people. The majority of the young people are born and raised here in Des Moines that are out there. Many of them, if you know anybody under 28 years old, are probably either friends or they're down there. So I want everyone to know that these are people from here that are hurt and that are passionate about what they are really standing up for. And I know that, and I want to apologize for people who are scared on all sides and fearful, and anybody that's had property damage to a business downtown. That is not the intent of this protest. And that is a very, very few people that are sabotaging this movement. And I want you to know that. And I think, and I said this at the governor's press conference, is that we know that it's a few bad apples that have created this culture in the police department, where we see videos of literally someone being murdered on the street that was well past the point of being detained. And that was a bad apple. There's a couple of bad apples in these protests too that have been ruining kind of the beautiful, I mean, it's a beautiful, passionate movement that is occurring. And it's time for that movement as well. So a couple of things, and I could give a lot of people on this call a shout out for the things that they've done, for statements that they've made, or for actions that they have occurred, but I want to call out two real quick. And one is a long time movement and being part of the solution. And Jim O'Halloran from O'Halloran International. When one of the killings happened in Minneapolis many years ago, Jim and his dad and his organization and his brother and his team all got together and said, we want to not have this happen in Des Moines. What can we do? And we all sat down collectively, Chief Wingert, their team, Urban Dreams team, and we came up with the headlight and taillight change out that we do every year up at North High School, right? So this work has been going on for a long time, building these relationships in the community between police, between organizations, between people has been happening for a long time. And statements are good, they're great. And I encourage each one of you to make a statement, even if it's not public, internal to your organization, to know that the rhetoric or the storytelling that Tiffany talked about. Storytelling is important here, right? We have to tell the story that this is a few bad apples on both sides that are creating the violence. But Kyle at Come and Go came out with a statement, and not only a statement, but action, right? And one action last night that I saw there, and from most of the business owners around the sculpture park, no one boarded up their windows. No one called in security. No one said, I want the police to guard my business. And if you don't understand how much that meant to the young people, that they were allowed to protest down there without being welcomed by, and here's the thing, I'm on both sides, right? Like I'm on the front line all night, and then I go behind both lines all night and sit there. I can't even remember days anymore. Monday, I had a 45-minute conversation with Chief Winger behind the line. Last night, a 45-minute conversation with Major Cooner behind the line, right? Talking about that. But then I'm on the other side of the line too. And that's what the young people say, is that we want to be able to protest and not be, lack of a better term, welcomed by police and riot gear. And when the law enforcement put down their shields at Terrace Hill, that ended the protest. And they moved on from there. That's what they wanted, right? So there's so many things out there that we can do collectively that show good, not only good faith, but action, right? Action. We need action. So those were the couple points that I wanted to make as far as that goes. Please ask any questions, and I'll answer any question I can, from being down there every single night on both sides on the front line and behind both lines.
Isaiah, thanks for your opening remarks. Kirk Tyler is asked to make a verbal question. So Kirk, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Isaiah, my wife and I were up at the Capitol on Monday evening. Found it very interesting, very educational. And I'm sure that both you and Jay are hearing this statement that I'm going to make many, many times. But we walked away from there and made a big impact. But now we're sitting there going, okay, now what? We'd like to get involved. We'd like to do something. We're not sure where to go and what to do. So if there was some kind of a clearinghouse or some place that you could direct people to, whether it's the business people, their families, their employees, to one place that they could go and say, okay, what's your interest? How would you like to help? Here's a lot of variety of things, ways we can help. But there's just so many people out there that are pissed off and not quite sure where to go. And so I'd just like to throw that out there to get some input for those people.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And actually, Jay and I just talked about that literally, right before this call, about creating stuff like that, so that, because it's hard to get involved, right? Like, I'll talk about Jim again. Like, he didn't know how to get involved in the community, right? Like, I love Jim, but it's hard. You don't know where to go. So we at Urban Dreams, we're willing to do that for any organization on this call or any organization that's not on this call or any group at any time. So we can, the best thing is to really, I think, have us at your office and figure that out, because it's not a one size fits all for everybody. And I don't think we could ever create a big enough clearinghouse where everybody could find something. So we need to sit down collectively and create this thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Isaiah, there was another question. It was just, can you tell us more about Urban Dreams and what you do? And I'll add to that. Can you just talk about the training program that you and I talked about earlier this morning?
Oh, you want to add to it? Okay. Is that what you said? You'll add to that part?
If you can just expand on what that looks like.
Yeah. Sorry, and I'm extremely tired, by the way, too. So if I go off on a tangent, excuse me for that. So Urban Dreams created in 1985. Many of you maybe know Wayne Ford. And we were created to really deal with the violence that was right here in this community on 6th and Forest, just north of DMAC Urban Campus, just south of North High School. And been on the same corner ever since. When we were designed, like I said, for the violence, and we were only designed to be open from 6 to 9 p.m. Well, as we were here, we started to understand more about what the community needed. So we expanded our programming. And over the years, it's moved to, now we are a full service outpatient substance abuse treatment center. We partner with Broad Lawns to have a mental health counselor here at our location and other workforce development opportunities. We also have our own workforce development program here, and we work with many of the organizations on this call to help get people from this community employed, and not just like temporary work, but gainful career employment. We work extensively with Des Moines Public Schools to work with their most at-risk students in the deferred expulsion program, where students that have been expelled or have an expellable offense get engaged back in school with our help and graduated. And then our community connectivity piece is one of the biggest things that we've done. So we do presidential and candidate forums. So we've done them to get information to the community here that typically is not touched. We also do the events like I talked about with the winter car checkup, where we get cars ready for winter. We do 24-hour community police buffets. A lot of the things we do are to promote community police relations as far as our outreach goes in our community, the kind of the traditional nonprofit stuff. But what we did start doing just a couple of years ago was cultural competency training. And we worked with Director Bradshaw at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy to train every single cadet besides the Des Moines and the Cedar Rapids, because they have their own academy, on what they refer to as race relations. And it was so well received by every single cadet, and they have a couple hundred per cohort, and we've done it, I think, 6 times now, that they wanted more. So after about the second time, we moved that training to 2 hours. So those are, and we've done it for a lot of businesses as well. So we only don't do law enforcement, but we tailor it to whatever industry we are going to. So if it's business to business sales, if it's education, whatever it is, we tailor the information so that you can understand best practices around that, but also historical stuff that needs to, oh, thank you for putting the website up there. And so, sorry, I'm the IT guy as well. So if our website is not quite up to date, we're much better at keeping our social media up to date. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, as well. So, and that's what we're offering everyone right now in the community. And we can send that out as well, a flyer on how we do it and what we do it. And we don't do it as that we're pointing fingers at all the hundreds of years of inequities. We talk about that because we need a historical context to make sure that we can understand why we are here. Akeo, my brother.
How you doing, sir? Yes, sir.
I'll finish up and then I'll let you go. We do that not only talk about the historical context of what we are, why we got to this point, but also we are solution based. So that's one thing, we have always been solution based. And that's where I think we all need to be, because we can all point fingers and we all can say it's their fault and they're doing this and they're doing that. But we need to make sure that if you want to be at the table, we don't want to cause any more problems. We want to be figuring out what solutions are. So sorry. Okay, I know you're busy. You're busier than I am right now. So
if I'll just thanks, Isaiah. Ko, thanks for making time for us. We know how busy you are. Congratulations on your election win last night.
Yeah.
And we know you've gotten very little sleep on the last a few days, but have just been doing tremendous work. And just want to thank you for all the great work you're doing for our community. And thank you for joining us today. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to give some insights in terms of what we should be doing as a community moving forward, and any advice you have for us.
That's why I didn't hear. I'm at the Capitol now, trying to do the people's business. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And are we talking about the protests now? What possibly individuals can do, especially when we're talking about the business community?
I think we can talk about all the above. Your insights into on the protests, advice that you can give the business community moving forward, and just your insights into what's happening and what we should be doing as a region.
Okay. But talking with the protesters, as Isaiah, and I'm sure you covered some of this, is that we have a group of young adults that are asking to be heard. Not just to be heard, but to also talk about some systemic solutions. These are my terms, not theirs, but that's what they're asking for. They feel you were dealing with individuals who are extremely in pain, not just because of the death of George, but because of over the decades that we've had situations that has transpired that has resulted in the murder, and I have to use that term, of individuals. And, you know, it's not justified, you know, and just so hopefully to bring some understanding to that, we're talking about individuals like Tamir Rice, who was 12 years old, who was playing cops and robbers in the park. And playing cops and robbers in the park, you know, he ended up dead after an officer got there, and and understanding after getting information that this officer himself, you know, had been dismissed from another police force, you know, and then hired at this one because of some indiscretions. With the individuals that were involved with the death, you know, of George, you know, this individual, understand, have been cited on many occasions of situations. So you have an emotional charge here, and that emotional charge with these young adults are saying that they're not seeing anything that is happening. Out of that, as we listen to them, they also were talking about how hard it was to get a job, that there's really no economic development in the urban communities throughout this whole state, which after you look at it, you look at any study, that is true. You know, you have staples that were in the community as we were growing up, such as even something simplistic as movie theaters, skating rinks, places to go to have events. When you look at in Des Moines, you look at the basically whether we call it the near north side, the west side of town, we look at that, there's not any type of facility that houses that. There's not a movie theater in the community that could help provide jobs for some young people. There's not a skating rink where individuals can go, which also couldn't help provide a place to go and provide jobs for young adults. You know, there's not an auditorium that individuals can actually put on events. One of the things that is a growing, you know, industry right now in entertainment is the spoken word. You know, and individuals having that, we are able to see in the Des Moines School District where they actually had two teachers that started this almost 3 years ago. What they found out that giving these individuals, these students that actually were had trouble in schools, actually probably was not going to graduate, you know, giving them an outlet to express themselves, you know, was one of the best moves that the district can make. Now, what happened with that is that it expanded. You know, after that first year, the superintendent saw where this was a plus and that they could use that to incorporate other students. Now we're looking at this program is implemented in elementary school, in the middle school, in the high schools itself. So we have to be innovative as leaders in the community and as business leaders in the community, and reaching out to be able to support these innovative programs. The other thing is that when listening to them, and talking about other, solutions or the problems that they have, is that most of the family members, the young people, their siblings aren't even thinking about college. One of the things that we were able to do 5 years ago is that I met with the former president of ISU, Stephen Link, and we created a program called ISU for Promise. And that means ISU adopted Moulton Elementary and King Elementary. That program then was developed by Dr. Elizabeth Bruner and her team. And as they developed that, it was actually taking and supporting these students that were in elementary, following through middle school, high school. 2 years ago, we actually sent the first cohort to Iowa State. There was 13 individuals that went to college, the first ones in their family. That addressed another serious issue that we have, the school to prison pipeline. We have individuals now that weren't thinking about, going and dealing, as we call it, underground economics. They weren't looking at drugs. They weren't looking about, vandalizing, getting into criminal activity. They were focused on college. They weren't focused on college before we got them into this program. So these are the innovative programs that we need to look at, and then mentoring. Without a doubt, we have mentoring programs. Please don't get me wrong. We have the alphas that have a mentoring program. They're doing good. We have individuals in the partnership mentoring, but we're not getting the young people that we also need to tap in. There's a targeted population out there that are feeling hopeless. They don't feel anyone's there. So they're creating their own culture, their own stuff. They're creating a subculture, and unfortunately, that a lot of times leads into criminal activity. We need to be able to reach those individuals, and we're seeing some of those individuals that's in this protest that we're at. At Merle Hay Mall on Sunday night, we were able to reach several of those individuals. Now, what was happening, and I haven't called President Denson or DMAC yet, we had one young lady, very vocal, very hurt, tears coming down. When we finally got past that point and we talked about what could help you better your life so you can be a leader, she was saying, I'm trying my best to get into college. I'm trying my best because I want to go into law. I want to change my life. I want to get that, in order. So we have to provide some resources for individuals to be able to do that. So we told her that we're going to contact DMAC and see if we can get you started. Now you have to work to continue, but you get that started. We had 3 others that came in and they were embarrassed, but we provided them a form, to be honest, that they said, we need to get our GED. So we're going to connect them with individuals. Others, we talked about, how do we bring them to the table? How do we bring them to a partnership table? Maybe even creating, for this population, a leadership, training, or bring them to the table to listen to the ideas, to make some decisions, but to actually have them sitting at the table with some of you who are leaders in our community that they would never have an opportunity even to meet. And again, we're talking about a certain population that could be uncomfortable in the beginning because of their conditioning. and where their mindset is at. But it does work. And I say that because it worked starting Creative Visions. When Chuck Johnson, the former CEO of Pioneer Hybrid, and the city, I think the Chamber of Commerce at that time, Michael Reagan, Tom Glenn, God rest his soul, when we first met because of the shootings and that type of thing that was taking place in the community, the decision was made to think outside the box. My position then, let's meet with these individuals. We met with 16 of the gang members, the top leadership. When we met with that leadership, we were able to get 6 of those individuals that wanted to change their lives. We began working with them. We didn't ask them to change the colors. We didn't ask them to pull their pants up, to take the cap off, because we knew we needed them to make that choice and them to have hope and see what they had to be able to, what they had to do to be able to function, in this society to create some systemic change. Long story short, we were able to do that. Creative Visions was born. Now, one of those individuals that started with us actually ended up going to DMAC. And I think he's going to graduate from Grandview now. And it took him years to get there, but he also got a scholarship and went to Paris and studied under the top chefs in Paris. Another one is driving a truck and working with that. Long story short, these individuals that started with us also realized that they no longer wanted to work in the human service field because they didn't want to deal with individuals that had the same mindset that they had, and they saw a better way of life. That's unfortunate, but that was the decision, and they're successful. Out of that first 6 that we, actually started with, we only lost 1. And then recently, after 22 years in doing this, just recently, last year, he came back around, contacted us, and said, I've screwed up, I messed up, I want to get back in. And he's living in Texas, and we're reaching out and helping him now. The point is, we have to begin thinking outside the box, but we have to begin to implement some systemic program for systemic change to be able to reach out to these young people. Some of those young people that we're dealing with, and the reason why we're able to talk with them, because we've worked with their parents and their grandparents, and they know that we're there, but they need something that is concrete for them to be able to deal with. They need that. And if we can get that done, and let me close with that, and I'll be quiet and take any questions that people have. Hip Hope, which puts on a young men of color conference, and also you have, they do a young women's conference. What we did last time, this last conference, and they've been doing this, I think, for 5 years now. The last conference, they asked me to come up with 5 things for them to do. One of the 5 was that they were to open up a bank account. And in that bank account, they were supposed to, deposit money. This money is to be used for college. This is to be used so they can continue their schooling. We then got individuals in the audience from different organizations and businesses to commit $500. So whoever saves the most money in their bank account, then they will end up with the large pot of money next year at the conference if they do the account, and if they also, there's 4 other things they're to do. Out of that, Urban Dreams, Isaiah actually got the bank that he's on the board of to help him open up that account. And if I'm not mistaken, the bank then contributed so much money to their account. So they actually had a nice amount starting off with. We had 23 young men that actually followed through with that. Again, that's 23 young men that their mindset was changed and hope was given to them because they saw individuals doing an investment. You know, ladies and gentlemen, my point is that as nonprofits that Isaiah and I deal with, one of the first things that we're always told, is that, we can't always throw money at it. I'm saying I agree you don't throw money at it. It's how we place the funds that are necessary to create those systemic changes. To be able to offer our programming that needs to be offered, and if we're not talking about economic stability, then everything else is basically, not in void. We have to create a stable environment for individuals. Does that resolve everyone, and is everybody going to come along? We all know in real conversation that no, they're not. We're still going to have those that prefer another lifestyle. We still will have those there. But we can put such a dent in the drug trade in this city, the disappointment, the hopelessness, that Iowa could become, a model throughout this country. We've been saying that for years. Chicago they're gone. It's not going to happen. LA, yes, there are going to be individual achievements that are going to be made. We are in a position to put a state in the United States in the leadership role, that this is how we were able to do it, because we actually came up with a strategic plan, a comprehensive plan to address our issues within the state itself. That is so doable, and it's doable without us having to look at a 100-year plan. But if we look at that comprehensive plan and really sit down and develop a plan and be inclusive with that plan, and we do short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, as you do in your companies, we will be successful in having progress and seeing that progress take place in generations, from generation to generation. So that's my spiel. I could go on, but I don't, but I'm open to any questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been, I know you're not getting much sleep these days, and having elections and legislature and everything, and just trying to do what you do otherwise. So thank you so much for your leadership and your comments. And I know you and I are scheduled to meet later today to talk about a lot of these ideas and build out some strategies, and really look forward to that as well too. And I know we're running a little bit short on time, and I think that we can continue these dialogues. There's some really great questions, and I know that anyone on the call can feel free to reach out directly to KO or Isaiah, and we'll get you their contact information. I'd also just remind you that both Urban Dreams and Creative Visions are nonprofits, and during COVID-19, it's been tough. So they're great causes to support for those of you who are looking for supporting nonprofits, and would just encourage you to take a strong look at that as well too. And we know exactly the amazing work that KO and Isaiah have been doing, not only this week, but in our community for a long time. So thank you for your leadership, and we'll continue to find ways to keep this dialogue going with this full group as well too. And just want to let you know, KO and Isaiah, that we're fully committed to action and not words, and working on all those ideas that you have laid out and more. We're listening, and we want to achieve results. And so let's make it happen.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone. Thank you very much.
And Akeo, you can't see all these comments, but there's lots and lots of, and I know Isaiah can see these, and you probably can't because you're on mobile, but lots of thank yous and appreciation for the great work you've been doing. So I don't have time to read them all. There's so many. We're going to just go really quickly here to Andrea Woodard on our team to do a quick legislative overview update in terms of, you see Akeo at the Capitol right now, and just some things we need to be thinking about. We know we're running just a few minutes over here right now, and then we'll wrap it up. So Akeo and Isaiah, you're definitely welcome to stay on the call. We'd welcome that very much.
Hey, Jay, I thank you, but I have to leave. I appreciate it, but looking forward without a doubt to working with all of you. God bless, and look, let's do this together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Akeo. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Isaiah. And honestly, I know we're already over time, but you're in luck because on Monday we're doing a legislative update at 10 a.m. and we'll just make sure to share that information with the group when we send out Akeo and Isaiah's information. If you do have questions about the legislative session that kicked off this morning, I'm happy to have side conversations, and otherwise Monday we'll talk a little bit about just the priorities of the partnership, what we're continuing to do in the days ahead, what we might expect to see in the next probably 2 weeks at most of a legislative session, as well as give a little bit of an update on elections during the call on Monday. So please feel free to join us, and we'll cover it all then. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Andrea, and thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to wrap it up right now. We usually do some action calls, but I know everybody has a busy day, and we will continue our dialogue moving forward. If you look at the calls to action on the slide here real quick, we do have a number of events coming up, but biggest call to action is to listen. We have to listen as a community. You heard a lot of great ideas from Akeo and Isaiah, and there's a lot of other listening that we all need to be doing. There's a lot of work we need to be doing, and that's my call to action right now is we need to listen, and then we need to convert to action and not words. It's a tough time for our country. It's a tough time for our region, but I don't know about you, but I'm pretty glad I'm in DSM USA, and we have some really great community partners, and we've never been afraid of challenges before. And COVID-19 has just given us as an opportunity to sit back and have a reset. And as we build this, not only next and new normal together, it needs to be a better normal, and issues like inclusion and sustainability and resilience and innovation. We need to do better, and we will do better. And that's what we're going to do. So thanks, everybody. Everybody stay DSM strong. We'll continue to get through this together, and we appreciate your time very much, and have a great day.